Let me ask you, we've done more work with your other company, actually. We may do be working with on exports, but mostly on SpaceX. And we've learned that about 60% of U.S. commercial satellites are financed actually by the Export-Import Bank. And there's been a great mushrooming of interest. We recently did a transaction with SpaceX for Bulgaria Sat. What's driving this whole the satellite industry? Obviously it's iPhones and streaming, but maybe you could give us a little more insight.
You mean what's
driving this whole satellite boom that has actually also been a part of SpaceX story and part of what we've been working on? Can you give us some insight on the satellite marketplace?
Well, I'd say the satellite marketplace isn't quite. I mean, the XM financing may be increasing in recent years, but in terms of the number of satellites, it's a relatively steady flow of commercial satellites. There's about, call it roughly 40 large commercial satellites that are launched every year. And these are satellites that are used for broadcast communications, in some cases weather, mapping, for Google Maps. So there's a whole bunch of satellites of all different types. But it's pretty steady. A bad year might be 30, a good year might be 50, something like that. Where it's really important, where XM's really important is in helping fund those missions. The money doesn't go to SpaceX. It's really to the satellite operator who wants to operate a particular satellite for a particular purpose, and then they will contract with a satellite maker, and they'll contract with a launch provider, and sometimes that's SpaceX, and then they will try to get the lowest cost of funds to fund that, the XM's really important in this equation because, the French have this thing called COFAS, which is very aggressive in providing low-cost funding. And if we didn't have the American XM Bank, it would be very difficult for us to compete on the international market because the French tend to favor their domestic rocket company. So they'll say, well, yes, we'll provide low-cost funding if you use the Ariane rocket. It's really important to have the U.S. in our corner with the XM Bank to counter the actions of COFAS.
And what has changed? I mean, I was, in preparing for today, in the 1980s, there was almost zero commercial satellites launched in the United States. It's now, I'm told, around 10% and growing. What changed that this has become? Is that all SpaceX, or?
It's mostly SpaceX.
Mostly SpaceX.
Yeah. So actually, before the fall of the Soviet Union, the United States used to launch a very high percentage of commercial satellites. In fact, the U.S. was the leader in commercial satellite launch. But with the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russian rocket industry was able to figure out how to be capitalist really fast. Since the USSR had invested so much money in rocket technology, they actually had really good rockets, and arguably the best rocket technology in the world at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. So they were able to completely take the commercial launch market away from the United States. So the United States went from, within the course of really just a few years, from being the leader in commercial satellite launch to being non-existent virtually. And then the French with the Ariane, and with a little bit of help from Germany and Italy, put a ton of money into the Ariane 5 rocket, also a good rocket. And the world commercial launch market then became essentially divided between the Russians and the French. The Russians probably having about 3/4 of the business, and the French having about 1/4. And that continued on for quite a while until a few years ago when SpaceX started launching the Falcon 9. And since then, we've steadily increased the share of US-1 missions, and I think we're now about a quarter of all commercial satellite missions are won by a U.S. company, or really won by SpaceX. And I think we've got a decent shot if we keep at it of achieving a majority of the commercial launch market, of winning over a majority of the commercial launch market. That's I don't want to count chickens before they've hatched, but it's looking increasingly positive that we'll probably we'll probably restore the United States to #1 on commercial launches in the world.
You also do a lot of work for the U.S. government and the Air Force in the launch area. What portion of that is your business? Can you talk to us? It's not really, we're on the more commercial side, but
Right.
Just to fill it out.
Well, actually, as far as U.S. government launches go, we have a very good relationship with NASA. NASA's been fantastic to work with and really has helped us a lot. And in fact, I'm not sure we'd even be where we are today without the help of NASA. So we're very, very grateful to them. NASA selected us as the primary system for transferring cargo to and from the space station. And so, in fact, our Dragon spacecraft is the only spacecraft capable of taking any significant cargo down from the space station. So there are a variety of means of getting to the space station, but in terms of bringing experiments back, which is critical to leverage the value of the space station, our spacecraft is the only one capable of doing that. I'd like to also maybe note that we get paid half as much per mission as Orbital Sciences, so there's another provider. And they only take stuff up. They take up less than we do, and they take nothing down, and they get paid twice as much per mission as we do. But that's okay. I mean, I'm
Not for the U.S. taxpayers.
No, I mean, I think maybe they should get fewer missions in the future, but I'm glad that we're able to, provide a service that's twice the value for money that, our competitor does.